Welcome to Safe and Sound, sponsored by White Mountain Fire and Life Safety. I'm Kirk Webb, your host, and today on the show we have Caittin Montoya, who is the Communications Supervisor for Navajo County Dispatch, and Kristine Sleighter with Show Low Police Department, the community relations person. So you've had a few different roles there, right? So
yes.
Kind of tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got to where you're at right now.
So I'm retired military and then bounced around the planet a little bit as a Department of Defense contractor. Retired, and my husband and I, we love Show Low so much in the White Mountains. This is where we decided to retire. Got here and couldn't sit still. Got on board with Show Low Police Department, actually working in their reception window part-time to begin with, and then moved into records and focused on doing a lot of training, a lot of education, and when the community relations position came up, I jumped on that and competed for it, and it's been a wild ride. It's fun.
So you do a lot of public information and dealing with that kind of the events and all of that, and making sure the community knows what's going on.
That's right.
So that's pretty awesome. And Caittin, kind of what's your background?
So I was born and raised in the northern part of the county in Winslow. I was going to school, changed my mind, career change, and I came into dispatch. I worked my way up the ranks, became the communications supervisor for Navajo County Sheriff's Office. And with the promotion, I also became the system administrator for all of the PSAPs, public safety answering points in Navajo and Apache County. And it's where I've been. It's nice to kind of go up the ropes, work with everyone, help the communities.
So when we're talking about PSAPs, the public service answering points, how many in our county are there? There
are 4. So Navajo County, Apache County, Show Low Regional Communications, and White Mountain Apache Tribal Police.
So that's, and that covers huge territory, doesn't it? So
yes, sir.
Great. That's a huge responsibility that you've undertaken, and the reason that we're kind of here today talking is, we've recently had some 911 outages, and so we're trying to, what are some of our backup plans? So one of the things that you came up with and been instrumental in making sure it happens is this new text 911.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So it was a project that the state 911 office would like the whole state of Arizona to be compliant with, which was the text to 911 services. It's a major help for the deaf and hard of hearing community. Not only that, it helps those citizens that are in danger where they're not able to call, home invasions, burglaries, or they just simply can't talk during a medical emergency. They can text to 911 and reach these 911 centers to get the assistance that they need.
Sounds like the right way to be going, especially with technology the way it is.
Yes.
And so what are those numbers that we would end up calling or text to that? What do we text to?
It's just 911. So in the 2 line, you just put 911 and type your message. The first message we would like to receive is the location of the emergency. That way, if we can't re-establish communication with the caller, at least we know where to send assistance.
So some good education points. You can't just simply go, I've had an emergency, and that's all you write.
Right.
You need to put kind of what the emergency is, just like when we're teaching the kids in school, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I thought about bringing I have this foam telephone that has this big old huge thing and that's what I would work with the students, kindergarten, first grade, and the push button. Now I don't know that many people really even know what those phones are these days. Kind of dating myself, but that's all right. But yeah, so, and we teach the kids, it's like you got to know your address, and not a P.O. box. I was always say, you live in that little tiny box?
Right.
No, I don't. So you got to know your street address, you got to know your phone number. And because even though we have the enhanced 911 services up here, right?
Correct.
But how long does it take to actually triangulate and get a good location for that phone call? Does it take time?
For the calls or text messaging?
So how do they find a location if they don't give a location?
So when 911 calls come in, it routes off the closest tower, cell phone tower, and we just have to try to rebid or update our tower location. That way we can get what we call wireless phase 2, which is the caller's location. It just depends on the region and sometimes the phone carriers if we can get that or not. I would say between 30 seconds to a minute.
So it does take a little bit of time.
Yes, sir.
So with the text, it doesn't provide that, or does it?
It does, but it's a little bit slower than the phone calls.
So it's even longer. So it's still trying to pinpoint that precise location. Because if I remember right, looking at being in dispatch and working with our dispatchers in there, the call comes in and it's like you got this 50-mile radius, and then it starts working its way down. So people, but yeah, so they've, so when a text come in, you still need to give basic information on what's going on, maybe even how many people are affected, an address, and a return phone number are the main things. Is that much different than what we need to have as far as doing a regular phone call?
Not at all. It really follows the same premise, whether you're calling in voice or text in. People just really need to focus. I know it's their worst moment in life. When you're calling 911 or you're texting 911, you're having a bad day. And your adrenaline is pumping, you're excited, you might not be thinking straight, there might be a medical issue. We just ask, please just try to focus, give us the location, like Caittin said, so that if the connection is lost, at least our dispatchers know where we can send assistance.
Right, and maybe even kind of what kind of assistance you're needing.
Exactly, fire, medical, police.
Yes.
So, because how often do you get 911 hang-ups?
Several a day.
It's a non-ending thing, right? And when you get a 911 hang-up, what's the procedure that you guys follow?
Generally, rule of thumb, I would say to try to re-establish the connection with that caller, whether that be calling back. With the technology changes, we are able to now text the callers if we can't get them with a voice call, to try to establish that connection again. I believe Shello PD is also the same protocol.
We do the same. Yeah.
And then do you send an officer out to that location as well to double check?
Yeah.
And so it ends up tying up services pretty rapidly. And I know there's always times where we're short on officers that are out in the field and having to bring others in and things like that. So when and I notice even with fire, we're starting to get calls on top of calls, and back to back and multiple at the same time, and some of them are significant. Takes multiple vehicles and apparatus and people to manage that scene or whatever the case might be. But so what are some of the drawbacks or common mistakes that maybe people make when they call 911 that maybe we can help educate them to, one, not be scared. I know when I'm teaching the little kids, do you know that person on the other end of the line? And here we keep telling you don't talk to strangers. So we're kind of sending them a mixed message, but it's like, you know what? Those dispatchers, just like the police officers and the firefighters, they're your friends. So what are some mistakes that maybe come up that are kind of common?
I would say one of our top ones, when people accidentally call 911, the day and age of the new technology, smartphones, smartwatches. Apple has a service where if you push your button several times, it automatically calls 911. So we get a lot of those calls, and people panic when they accidentally call 911. So their reaction is just disconnect that call right away. So we have to get the connection back. That takes up time and resources. Just stay on the line if you accidentally call. Just say, hey, it was an accident. You're not going to get in trouble. Just that way.
And I think there, years ago that probably was the case. You're going to get in big trouble because the officer's going to show up, and and I can even remember years ago. It's funny you talk about the the Apple Watches and things, and those are very convenient and good to have, especially if you can't talk.
Right.
But I remember one time, I lived right next door to my little brother, and they had gone for the weekend, but they left their dogs in the house. And we were kind of watching them and stuff, and the dog actually knocked a phone off of the counter, and they had a big button to push for 911, one of those phones. And so the dog called 911, and I happened to be coming home about that same time, and there's 4 or 5 officers around my brother's house, and they're kind of, because they don't know what's going on, and they hear the dogs barking, and finally it's like, yeah, they're gone for the weekend. I got a key. So there are some very unique circumstances,
definitely,
of things that go on. But it's important to, like you say, don't be scared, don't hang up.
Right.
You're not in trouble, because we look at all of our jobs, and we're there to do what? We're there to help.
Yep.
Right? Yep. So what are some unique things that you get to deal with? Because when that outage went out, you had some other unique issues going on, right?
We sure did, yeah. We had, at the city, our email server went down. And on Friday evening, then 911 and the phone lines went down. And all of our emergency notification, or Z pages, for the executive team, fire, police, not the dispatching side, just the paging, the texting. All of those groups were now unavailable to us. So we had to immediately kind of shift our focus and what manpower we had available, go and rebuild those so that we could send out those. But when 911 and the phone lines go down, that's when we immediately had to shift and push out on social media backup means that White Mountain residents could reach the Regional Communications Center. The first, of course, is if it's an emergency, text 911. And the second is we have in reserve an emergency cell phone in our dispatch center. And so we posted that number along with the text 911. And we will keep that number always. It's 928-207-2722. And
so 207-2722. That's not too bad.
That's not too bad. So not too bad.
But and we'll get that posted, and I'm sure it's going to be out there, because that's a great backup plan. And unfortunately, because we live in a rural area, we get a lot of these outages, and but it's still nice having technology and having other ways and means of, worst case scenario, do we have people at the police department that you can, they may not be at the front counter, but there's access points to where you can make and get to the hospital if it's, if you can't get through. But one of the interesting things I was, when we were talking before we started this, what happens if your phone lines get overwhelmed? Because does that ever happen?
It does. It does. At Show PD, we have 5 911 lines. And when that, let's use the example of a 3-car accident, and we've got multiple injuries, and all of the officers have responded. Well, you've got multiple people out there that are being excellent Samaritans, and they're calling in saying, hey, I see this accident. I see that there's 3 people that are actually really hurt, or, there's somebody that's walking away, but, we can't get their attention, and it seems like that person, there's something wrong. They're very hurt. So immediately our lines fill up. So when we get to that 5th call, the 6th call comes in on 911, and it's automatically going to roll over to Navajo County's Emergency Response Center. So, we want our citizenry to understand that if you call 911 and you're expecting to get Sholo's Regional Communications Center, but you get Navajo County, you didn't do anything wrong. And you're not being pushed off anywhere. That's not what's happening. What's happening is you're that 6th caller in an emergency, And rather than that line continuing to ring and that emergency be put on hold, we've got that backup mechanism where that call rolls right over to another communications center so it can be handled.
So does it work the other way opposite for you guys as well? If you get overwhelmed and...
Yes, except we don't roll over to Shoalo, we roll over to Apache County.
Okay.
But it is common for all 911 centers to have that redundancy.
It's a good, and that's good to know. I mean, I've been doing this for quite a while, and I didn't know it would actually do that. So, learning something new myself today. But and that's what we always, if we stop learning, maybe we should figure out something different and start learning again, right? So, but so our dispatch centers, and they're quite often overwhelmed, aren't they? Especially when we get like, coming into this time of year, we start having those forest fires. And how do we educate the folks on looking at other sources of, because not everybody uses the internet. Not everybody uses Facebook. And so we're kind of relying on trying to use all kinds of outlet sources. I mean, even the simple sign out in front of the station or something like that, or the city signs, and because I know in times when, like a few years ago, we had the Cedar Fire, and we were getting calls for smoke all the time, and I'm sure the phone lines inside dispatch were just lit up. And how many dispatchers are usually on duty at a time?
For our center, it's generally about 2, maybe 3.
And I think it's about...
Ours is pretty much the same. Sometimes we'll flex up to 4. It depends on what's going on. And of course, if a crisis does come up, folks get called in and we beef up as quickly as we can.
And I know through Navajo County Emergency Management, they've set up the 311info.net. And that's a great resource. Looking at, so it's difficult to alert everybody. And I think one of the things that people need to maybe really look into subscribing to is that Ready Navajo County.
Yes.
It's that phone service system, texting. I think it's email. It's calls on whether you have a landline or a cell phone, and even if you're out of state, you're going to get those messages. And so that's another good resource that I think is being used to be able to alert people that may or may not be using that social media type stuff. And so, and if people don't, do you know the process to sign up for Ready Navajo County?
I already did, but I did it so long ago. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it wasn't very difficult at all. You can go to the Navajo County Ready, Set, Go site, go to their splash page, and you can sign up. If you do not have access to the internet technology, if you call into Navajo County Emergency Management and Preparedness Office, I'm certain that they would help you walk through the process to try and get you signed up.
Yeah, and I was going to get to that point that, yeah, absolutely. If you don't feel comfortable figuring that out because I have to get my grandkids to help me figure out some of this internet stuff, but give them a call. They're to emergency management, or even just call the basic Navajo County line, and they'll get you routed to the right location. And they do a great job of getting you signed up and finding out what area. And that helps in so many ways, with evacuations, with notifications. Exactly. I mean, unfortunately, we've even had shootings in the area that we've had to notify neighbors. And so if you're not signed up for this program, how do we let people know what's going on? So
and waiting until there is an emergency, that's not the right time to try and sign up, because all of those people are now focused on that emergency, trying to manage it, trying to help people. At that time, that's not the right time. Right. Now is the right time.
Exactly. Do it before it gets heated and in a situation where I wish I had that.
Yep. Yeah.
So anything else that you'd like to share with our public about dispatch and You know, and I know personally, I think the dispatchers and those that work behind the scenes are not appreciated as well as they should be. You guys hear and go through a whole lot and are organizing and sending out crews and getting all that, and then you never hear the tail end of what was the outcome and things like that. And I think that's probably got to be somewhat traumatic in some cases for you guys. But how do you deal with stuff like that?
Our coworkers are a great resource. They know what we're going through and they can relate to it. Just to vent or even just talk to get it out, because sometimes maybe our family wouldn't understand. Mental health teams can sometimes come in and vent, or not vent, just where we can talk and they'll help us through it. But our coworkers and outlying agencies are a great resources for us to kind of tap into.
And that's good to keep looking out for each other. And that, you know, I've been a part of that peer support group, and it is a great resource to be able to rely on those that understand and know what you're going through, right. and to be able to, you know, because we got to stay in the game. Because even if you have a dispatcher that gets sick, just basic illness, does that put a major hurdle in the day's activities?
Yeah, because most dispatch centers are already understaffed as it is. So when we have one go out, then it's more mandated overtime, longer shifts at the console, more time away from our families, and so we just got to think outside the box to try to get those shifts filled and the citizens to help.
It's definitely it's a physically and emotionally draining job. You know, imagine yourself, you know, sitting in front of anywhere from 6 to 8 monitors, and you're there for anywhere from 8 to 12 hours straight. The only time you're walking away from there is for, you know, brief respites. That's it.
Right.
And our dispatchers they're truly the first responders. They are the first one. They are the ones that are trying to keep someone calm, keep someone together, while they wait for that help to get to them.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I hope to get to the point where dispatchers are recognized as that true first responder, and they deserve that.
Yes,
know?
They do.
But so as life goes on in a dispatcher, do you see a lot of turnover?
Yes.
So if somebody what are some qualifications that a person might need if they're interested in becoming a dispatcher or community relations type person, because that's tremendous, overwhelming too.
So for Navajo County, you have to be 18, have a GED or high school diploma. We require a valid driver's license. If all of those requirements are met, then you will be set on to testing. You have to pass the required testing, so it's what we call a critical. It kind of gauges your multitasking and your typing. From there, it's a oral interview. If that's passed, then you will be sent on to a computer voice stress analysis, which is a kind of like a lie detector polygraph kind of test, but it's not a polygraph. And then from there, we'll do your background interview. And I believe Sholo's is just slightly different. Just
rearranged a little different in the order, probably.
Yeah,
but,
basically the same, yeah.
So, typing, because I know that's probably one of the biggest things. Because I looked at, you know, do I want to be a dispatcher? No, I can't type. I do but how many words per minute do they even, at the minimum, to be able to
30.
pass? So 30.
Yeah,
so that's not outrageously fast.
It's not. It's an acquired skill. So if you're not quite there, just go online, do the free online typing tests, and you'll get your typing skills built up to that standard.
And I have noticed when I've been in dispatch, you know, the few times I've been in there, that multitasking, oh my goodness, that is just, you know, I'm the type of person, put the blinders on, and when somebody else is talking, and you guys have radios, you got phones, and sometimes 2 phone calls that you're dealing with, and that's just, how do you manage all that?
You just got to start with the highest priority and work your way down the list, and it's never ending.
Yeah, and it's like you say, it is never ending, but truly, if somebody has a desire to, do the dispatch centers allow people to come and kind of observe, or maybe do a tour, get an idea of, because I know with us in the fire, and I believe police is the same way, that, get a taste for what it is. Right. Because you may think you have this perception in your mind of what it's going to be like, but then in reality, it is completely different.
Yes.
So being able to spend a little time, talk to the dispatcher. So if somebody's interested, how do they go about getting something like that? They
could call in on our non-emergency line and request to speak to our hiring board, and then just ask to do a dispatch sit-along, similar to a ride-along with an officer, and we can get that set up for you.
Nice.
Same thing with Show Low PD. We were locked down pretty tight during COVID, because of course we didn't want to unnecessarily expose any of our dispatchers. We are beginning to lighten those restrictions. But definitely when it comes to applicants, we want them to come in and do a ride along so that they see and experience the truth behind the voice. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Well, I appreciate both of you coming on to the show today and talking about stuff that I feel is very important. And thank you for your time and for your service. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Safe and Sound. Join us next for the next edition. Thank you.